And thanks so much for staying with us. Our top story this hour, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed displeasure at the recent cabinet reshuffle. Answering questions in the National Assembly, Ramaphosa says the changes have added to the narrative of instability. He also maintained that the reshuffling the ministers is the president's prerogative. Ramaphosa further says if he's fired, it would be at the pleasure of the president. He says questions regarding the cabinet reshuffle should be directed to President Jacob Zuma. Speaking on the contentious issue of corruption, Ramaphosa says corruption is a big worry for the country. He says the Gupta family should welcome the commission to probe the allegations of state capture, as this would give them a chance to clear their name. Ramaphosa also advised politicians and board members not to interfere in the running of state-owned enterprises.
The issue of instability has been raised by those who rate us globally, and when they have looked at us, they see all those issues are referred to: corruption, crime, as well as instability. And truth be told, as we do a number of things and as we act, like, for instance, the recent cabinet reshuffle, we must admit that it has added to the narrative of instability. Where we find that people are not performing their tasks and they are not serving the people of South Africa, they should be removed. They should be removed from those positions, and we should, following great due diligence, make sure that we appoint people who are able to perform the tasks that they are supposed to be given. We should not just appoint people for the sake of them being in positions to please whoever. We should appoint people who are ready, willing, and able and capable of serving the people of South Africa. I'm not capturing, and I'm not captured. That should be clear on the record. And by whoever, foreign forces or Guptas or whoever, I'm not captured, and I'm absolutely clear about that. In my own conscience, in my own heart, I have never been captured by anyone. We have called for a commission of inquiry, and that family should welcome the appointment of a commission of inquiry, so that they should have an opportunity of also clearing their own names. They must subject themselves to the commission, and we're hoping that this commission should be appointed soon. And the president, I know for a fact, has been busy at it and working out precisely how this commission should function.
And of course, that's Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa answering questions in Parliament earlier today. Oliver Dixon is a social political analyst, and Tsepo Khadima, political analyst, joining us in studio. Congratulations are in order. Good evening to you as the new chairman of the Indian Ocean Rim Association Business Forum. Let's just start there. Get that out of the way.
Thank you.
Congratulations indeed.
Big job ahead the next 2 years, but I look forward to it.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the business of the day in Parliament with Cyril Ramaphosa. His demeanor really seemingly of a man who has nothing to lose, even to the point of joking that if he's fired, it would be at the pleasure of President Jacob Zuma. What do you make of that?
I think first and foremost, the issue is that parliamentary questions, as we saw them, it appear that it has become a ritual. People are going through the emotions so they can, tick a box that they did have a question and answer session. And I guess maybe that's how just the system is designed. But listening to that, really, I think at the end of the day, I battled to find what was tangible, and more so from the Deputy President being the leader of government business, that in many areas he said a lot of things, but we needed a Twitter handle of really what is being done, and more so in terms of him as part of the collective. If I reflect on it, I think the issue of expressing regret at the cabinet reshuffle, it's also amazing because here we have a contender for the highest office who will most possibly, come December, has got a very good chance of being a president. I mean, it's a two-horse race. He could become president if he's not Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Any one of them can be president. If they do so, most certainly I think they will then become president in 2019, any one of them. So if it was to be Mr. Ramaphosa to be president, exactly expressing those type of ill feelings at the decision taken by his superior, being the president, what will he do when he is in position himself, having to take those hard decisions? I think perhaps maybe he didn't take good counsel before he could reflect in the manner that he did. And if anything, I think that he was more of trying to be a diplomat than being a politician. If he's, after all, a member of the African National Congress, he's a member of Parliament on the African National Congress ticket. So even when he's speaking in Parliament, he's speaking to fellow politicians. They might be from other parties. And in many studies, he said the side of the table, this side of the table, without explicitly saying, you're the Democratic Alliance, or you such and such a party. I think that would have, it was a great opportunity for him to do campaigning, because being, of course, a deputy president with government business, he doesn't have a lot of leverage to do campaigning. And today was a perfect platform to campaign, and I felt that maybe he just didn't rise to the occasion.
Yeah, Mr. Dixon, you also think that it was a little bit devoid of the detail because it's a regurgitation of what we've heard previously, the issue around calling for a judicial inquiry into corruption and also lamenting the fact that corruption impacts on investor confidence, etc. But very little else new.
Before I get to that, I know we're not on ANC decides here, but I just want to say I wouldn't call it a two-horse race just yet. Dr. Zweli Mkhize may just actually surprise us. So I think
you've got inside information.
I don't think I have inside information, but I think at this stage it's an open-ended race, quite still. Importantly, I do think there was a bit of campaigning happening for Cyril Ramaphosa here, strategically in the sense that he is quite aware of the fact that a lot of the people who would be voting for him are people who are not happy with the Zuma regime. And that's the reason they would be voting with him. If he stood there in unison with all of Zuma's action in recent times, it would look like, wait, you're no different. Why would we then actually support you come December 2017? So there was a bit of campaigning. He just showed, yo, I actually don't agree with this. In that sense, I would have done it differently. So there is a sense of, wait, he may have done it differently. But I think where Cyril Ramaphosa left us empty was you can't just say you're not happy with the cabinet reshuffle and that you think it adds to the narrative of instability without actually substantiating what you think an appropriate cabinet reshuffle would have been. And look, there are various arguments you could make. I mean, this was Jacob Zuma's 12th cabinet reshuffle. So there are questions about does he appoint very well? The fact that he has to reappoint several times mean his first sort of appointments weren't too good. So there's arguments to be made around that. Is his strategy salient enough? And Cyril Ramaphosa could make all those arguments. He just chose not to. I don't understand why that was a decision he made. I think I agree with Tepo, the ill-advisement on the balance between being a politician and a diplomat. I think there is that pandering towards wanting to satisfy international forces that may want to withdraw from this. But I do think that he has a legitimate concern, and I think as someone who's in the race for presidency this December, he should have given substantive reasons for his distraction, and I would like to hear them. With regards to the idea specifically around the things that he suggested that he thinks are good in terms of his responses, specifically with regards to the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. Again, there he showed very strong support behind President Jacob Zuma by reaffirming that I know the president has been working hard on it. He's applying his mind by working out exactly how this Commission of Inquiry should be working. So that gives us an idea that the state holistically and the office of the presidency holistically is taking corruption serious. Both the president and the deputy president. They're really thinking about the mechanics going into the setting up this sort of Commission of Inquiry and the extent and scope to which the work of this Commission of Inquiry will extend to. And I think that was an important submission to make.
Yeah, you didn't pick up that he suggested almost a rudderless ship, or that the administration has completely derailed from the objectives of what the country needs around poverty alleviation. It really sounded more like a report back on service delivery and what the ANC has done, but not touching on specifics in terms of the poverty levels and what strategies are there to deal with even youth, the project of 2030.
I mean, firstly, our previous budget, at least the last budget done by Praveen Gordhan, Cyril Ramaphosa came then back to Parliament and defended that budget. It's quite clear what the breakup of that budget was. 70% of that budget was spent on purely the objective of poverty alleviation. 70% of that budget. So Cyril Ramaphosa, much like Jacob Zuma, genuinely believes that a lot is being done with regards to poverty alleviation and that the government's working hard towards that. I think what we need to hear more from him specifically, and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma there, is what would you do different? How would you do it differently? Because they both show dissatisfaction towards the structure of the economy as it currently stands.
No, but I mean, there wasn't radicalism. I suppose that's perhaps what one would have wanted. It wasn't earth-shattering, considering, you know, again, making reference to the World Economic Forum, the fact that South Africa is now ranked 61 from 47, and issues around corruption primarily being focused on government and state-owned entities. I didn't get a sense that corruption is not only a privy of government necessarily.
Look, under our constitution, there is only one unit within the executive branch as well as the judicial that has got the means of fighting corruption under the criminal justice system that we have, which is South African Police Service and, of course, the National Prosecuting Authority. Any other person who is telling people that they are going to fight corruption other than giving substantive evidence of acts of corruption to the law enforcement agencies, anybody else who's saying that they're going to fight corruption without doing that, they are lying and deceiving the public. There is nobody else. So if in South Africa we talk about corruption, but we were to now look at the law enforcement agencies together with the National Prosecuting Authority in terms of what is being done, what is the success rate, such a person will be taken serious because nobody else has got that constitutional privilege or authority to be able to fight corruption. So when politicians tell you that they are going to fight corruption and talking about all of these things, they are effectively just deceiving the public. So that's really what we need to do. On the other hand, if I listen to really the type of questions that are asked by the members of parliament from right across the political spectrum, you can't help but think that this is nothing other than just really to tick the box to say, look, we have asked questions and happened. I mean, I was very interested, by the way, to hear the Deputy President now saying that he's the one who took the decision to bring to an end the work of the so-called war room. I'm one of the people that loudly protested on the establishment of the war room on the basis that it was unlawful and it was bound to bring about the governance issues which now the Deputy President today conceded. In the first place, it should never have been established, but they established it, and its work was in fact counterproductive and was against the governance protocols that have been built in. The other thing that I didn't get a sense that I think this government specifically has got a very good handle on is on the capital structure or the ownership structure of the state-owned enterprises. The manner in which our state-owned enterprises currently are structured, it is absolutely impossible to allow them to be able to compete on a world stage. I always give these examples, and I cannot understand why our government is not taking leave from our bilateral and multilateral partners, such as the People's Republic of China and India. Just this past month, India did a partial sale. That means that they fundamentally transformed the ownership model of National Thermal Power of India. It's a state-owned company. It is still a state-owned company, but now it is able to raise capital, not rely on government guarantees. There is no other company anywhere else in the world that can be sustainable, become profitable, and be strong on the funding model that we have of state guarantees. It doesn't exist. The largest energy company in the world today is Gazprom, state-owned, but at the same time is able to tap into capital markets beyond debt. But here in South Africa, we are convinced. So I would have hoped that today, the Deputy President, as the leader of government business, should have articulated that what changes need to be crafted into law around the ownership model of our state-owned enterprises. And even the opposition, by the way, all they can tell you that this is a bottomless pit. And unfortunately, some of the opposition parties are being used by the private profiteers who are wanting to see the privatization of these jewels, crown jewels, for their own benefit. And that is something that I don't get a sense that even the governing party is much awakened to, and in fact is alert to that reality that right now ESCOM, even the charade that's happening in Parliament of the so-called inquiry, is designed to paint a picture which will eventuate in the breakup of ESCOM and its privatization. And I would have thought that today he should have at least boldly resolved on those issues, but that the ownership model needs to take root of what is best practice. And best practice is, as I say, of these two countries I've just mentioned.
And I mean, when he was referring to or giving a warning to politicians not to interfere in the running of state-owned entities and its boards, is that just naive in the sense that, of course, there would be political interests? We know how South Africa, under apartheid, had thrived, and industries and empires were created based on the levers of state-owned entities. And the radical economic transformation and changing the patterns of the economy was used as a conduit, if you will, that we need to use SOEs to drive the transformation agenda. Do you find that he was either speaking in tongues or he's being naive?
Firstly, I think Dep was incredibly correct about politicians and their rhetoric about corruption. They're not serious about corruption if they don't give an action plan that involves judicial processes in their fight against corruption. I think what politicians imagine corruption to be is that it's a moral issue, so we must have a moral cleansing ceremony, maybe slaughter a cow or two at Nazareth, and then it's fine. I don't think that's enough. I think a lot more needs to be done in terms of corruption. But with regards to the interference in SOEs, and oftentimes it has a relation to corruption, is that there's a conceptualization, at least a perception, that the interference of politicians in SOEs is corrupt, and that perception is oftentimes correct, but oftentimes it's also not. In the instances where it is correct, it's very difficult to trace these sort of things down because they found clever ways to maneuver around what's legal and what's not legal to remain in a position of plausible deniability to protect themselves from implication, criminal implications specifically. So fighting corruption really is difficult. So we do need a concrete action plan in terms of how that's going to happen in ways of, and I think the last time we had a good concrete plan on fighting corruption was towards the twilight of Thabo Mbeki's regime, where he spoke about reforming the state procurement procedure and centralizing tender boards and tender committees, and that to some extent did help, not entirely, so we need to take it a step further.
No, but I was referring also to the fact that I think it's myopic in his approach as to where corruption stems from and where it ends around one particular family. I mean, he didn't overtly also mention President Jacob Zuma by name, and suggesting that for one reason or the other, corruption is only confined in this particular space. And yet we've seen, in terms of the accounting industry or auditing industry.
Yeah, look, I think there's ample evidence. First and foremost, I keep referring to this number. The GDP of this country, which is economic activity, money in and out, 4.1 trillion rand. If there's anybody today, more so a politician, who can still stand up and use the Guptas as a scapegoat, that politician suffers from extreme poverty of ideology. The numbers just simply do not agree to that reality that is being painted. So therefore, you need to go beyond that. When we are saying, let's look at the issue of, is the state being captured, or which arm? Is it the executive arm of the state, which will be government, or whoever? But this inquiry cannot be an inquiry that is based on the half-baked document called State of Capture, because it is a document, it's not even a report, and I will hold on to that until somebody can adduce valid, substantiated legal arguments. However, the issue of an inquiry, I think also the president needs to act decisively in establishing this commission of inquiry with clear terms of reference that are much wider, looking far beyond even 1994, so that we can be able to know that when we go to 1994, what type of a country we inherited, what economic structure it had, and so that we can correct some of the looting that has happened before 1994, which today some people are happy to keep that loot, and hence they will make noise. Investigate everybody. And when you investigate everybody else, you lift the curtain, it will bring confidence to South Africans. Therefore, to use one family is a non-starter. On the other hand, the macroeconomic policy of this country is long overdue for fundamental reform. Unless you reform it, the system we have is designed to perpetuate high unemployment, high inequality, as well as high levels of poverty. The current macroeconomic policy that we are so beholden to, which was bequeathed to us, by the way, by the Western powers, who now themselves, some of the eminent economists, even people like Professor Joseph Stiglitz, who's an economics Nobel laureate, speaks about how the neoliberal macroeconomic policy that people, countries such as South Africa are beholden to, is a failed system. But in our case, for as long as we hold on to it and we do not transform it, there will be no hope whatsoever that the ordinary people who every day are battling poverty, unemployment, and inequality, there can never be any hope for them. So therefore, we need to radically, in a fundamental way, forgo the existing macroeconomic policy, which is designed only to enrich the very, very few.
Yeah, Mr. Dixon, before we come to you, I believe Carl Niehaus, MKMVA NEC member, joins us on the phone line. Good evening to you, Mr. Niehaus, and thanks so much for joining us. Your observations in Parliament today, and especially the jab that, you know, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa would be happy either way, whether he's recalled or not.
Well, I think Mr. Ramaphosa must underline the fact that it is the prerogative of the president to decide who is in cabinet. And if he said that he is happy to be recalled or not recalled, I suppose he just accepts the authority of the president, which is good if he does, because that is the constitutional situation. And it would have been good if the members of the South African Communist Party also accepted it in that way, rather than the kind of negative comments and reactions that we've seen from them with the recall of their Secretary General, Dr. Bladen Nzimande.
And your reaction to how he responded to the question around the cabinet reshuffle?
Well, I haven't been able to be aware of what exactly his response was, so I wouldn't like to indicate my response to that. I'll first have to have a look at that. Unfortunately, I came in very late in this discussion. I only came in the last few minutes, so I haven't been able to be part of the discussion.
In a nutshell, he says that it fuels the narrative of instability in the country.
Well, if he said that, then he's entirely wrong. The president, I believe, had taken a very progressive step by the appointments that he had made. We had a discussion about that in your studios just the other day. And I indicated then that I believe that the president had made a very balanced decision with regards to politics and with regards to ability with the people that he appointed. And it cannot be that when the president actually carries out his prerogative in terms of the Constitution to change the makeup of the national executive in order to make it more effective and more productive and more in line with service delivery and with radical economic transformation, that will lead to instability. Honestly, I don't think, if that is what Deputy President Ramaphosa said, that he is correct in that assessment.
We had Alex Mashile in studio yesterday talking about even if the president has a prerogative, but he's not there on his own steam, that it is a collective, including the tripartite alliance. So your reaction to that in light of what the deputy president said?
Well, the tripartite alliance has been most provocative during the last couple of months. The tripartite alliance have, as you know, passed resolutions to say that President Zuma should not be part of meetings of the SACP and of COSATU. So I think for them to complain that someone else is causing instability within the tripartite alliance, and especially for the one member of the tripartite alliance in the name of the South African Communist Party to complain when the Secretary General is removed after he had used every possible public platform that he possibly could have used to attack the president is disingenuous. There is no place anywhere in any company or in any organization where the head of that organization is attacked in the manner that Dr. Blakely Nzimande attacked President Zuma, that head of the organization will not be at some point feel his or her hand forced to act against a person who behave in that manner.
All right, so we're going to have to leave it there. Mr. Carl Niehaus, MKMVA NEC member. Mr. Dixon, just in closing remarks, whether it would be a wise move for President Jacob Zuma, considering the rumor mill, that he might just axe Cyril Ramaphosa?
No, because then it would really add to instability. So I think Cyril Ramaphosa was reaching a little bit when he said that the president's reshuffle added to instability. While there may be good arguments for it, and we need to hear those arguments, before then I think it's premature to say he did. I think, for instance, the removal of Blakely Nzimande from the Department of Higher Education is a good move, and it adds to stability. Cyril Ramaphosa needs to engage that. But do I think that the removal of Cyril Ramaphosa is a good thing? No, then it would really add to instability. I think Cyril Ramaphosa has done a stellar job with just one keeping at ease rating agencies. While we hate them, we still kind of have to respect their ratings because it determines how much money we can borrow going into our next budget. And those sort of things are important. I think President Jacob Zuma and Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa did a good job at the last BRICS summit, and we're hosting that next year. And they've been doing a great job in terms of strengthening that relationship when they went on the recent visit to China a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago. So I think it's important that Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa remains in that position, unless, of course, there are better reasons for a different candidate who can do exactly that, maintenance of sort of international forces that can impact our currency stability too. And these are all really sad things that we have to adhere to these things, because these things are inherently corrupt. The fact that Momentum still exists, the fact that Media 24 still exists, and the fact that all these companies that exist because of apartheid loot still exist, and that adds to our instability is kind of sad, but it's the reality of politics.
We're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. As always, thank you so much for joining us. And I have to reiterate this, the chairman of the Indian Ocean Rim Association Business Forum and political analyst Dep Cyril and Mr. Oliver Dixon, social political analyst, joining us. We take a quick ad break, and we're back with ANC Decides with Mfundo Mapalane just after this.